You're listening to the Tony Steuer podcast, where Tony interviews financial literacy advocates who are changing the conversation on money, so you can catch up on the latest trends and ideas in the world of financial literacy and education. Presented by Paperwork. Be prepared for life.
Welcome to the Tony Steuer podcast presented by Paperwork. I'm pleased to be joined today by Blair Wachob. Blair is a senior director with CSAA Insurance Group. In this episode, we'll be discussing why the insurance industry isn't stale, leadership, and how insurance and emergency management fit together. Blair, welcome to the Tony Steuer podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, Tony, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I am as well. This is great. I don't meet too many people who have interest in both insurance and emergency management, so this will be a great conversation.
Looking forward to it.
Fantastic. So, where I always like to start is learning more about you. Can you tell us about, what is your origin story? How did you get started in insurance?
Yeah, it actually goes pretty far back. So as a kid, I want to say maybe 11, 12 years old, I kind of got bit by the finance bug back in the day when they used to print the stock tables in the newspaper and people still got newspapers. I was curious, like, what do these numbers represent and what is this all about? And I quickly discovered that there's this concept of having your money work for you. And I kind of pulled that thread, and it led to me going to college to study finance. And upon graduation, really looked at getting into anything related to finance, and had an opportunity to join the insurance industry. And kind of from getting my foot in the door there, I kind of dove head first and really pursued a lot of the industry groups, continuing education, to kind of further my involvement and my education in the space, and just really enjoyed the career. It's something where we can come in and help people and protect their families every day, and it's really noble work that I'm proud to be part of.
Well, that's great. And I think people tend to forget that sometimes, that it is about protecting people and that it is about helping people at its core. The insurance industry. And I think one of the other things you said there is also key is continuing education. Why do you feel continuing education is so important?
Things are always changing, and it's a technical industry. There's a lot of moving parts, and it's important to kind of keep your skills sharp and current on trends. When I first started in the industry, some of the risks that we manage today didn't even exist. 15 years ago, you didn't have strangers riding in your car, working as an Uber driver or renting your house out as a vacation rental. And there's been all these new exposures that have come in that are exciting because they keep things new and they keep us on the toes. And how do we respond to make sure that we're providing the proper coverages that our customers need in a disciplined way as well to protect the insurance companies?
Fantastic. Well, and there you said something I think is also a very key point, is that the insurance companies do have a role in this. I think sometimes people forget that the insurance companies also need to maintain a profit to stay in business, so that they'll be around to pay a claim. So, with that said, is how would you explain that to consumers? How do you explain that to your customers about that insurance companies also need to stay at the table?
Yeah, I think it fits right into the theme of your podcast, Tony, with this whole idea of getting ready. And as you would with a household, an insurance company needs to be financially stable. We've all seen the events that can happen over the years, from significant hurricanes to wildfires to all the different types of events that come up that make the news, that there are significant losses and consequences that come with that. And the last thing you want when you've got to file that claim for your property or on your auto insurance is for your insurance company to not be on that strong financial footing. So it's critical that they're strong stewards of the premiums that they earned, and that they invest them wisely and conservatively to be there when the customers ultimately need to collect on that promise that is their insurance policy.
Well, that's great. And I think that's very well said. And I think that is something that consumers sometimes miss, that the best insurance policy is not always the one with the lowest premium. And the best insurance company is not necessarily the one with the lowest premium. So, that's great. And I think that's important information for people to be able to take away, is that, what goes beyond that is you want an insurance company that's, going to be there.
Absolutely.
So,
that has a strong track record, that has great service. The last thing you want when you're filing a claim is some company that's not going to get back to you or be responsive or care for you in what could be one of the most difficult times of your life, and like you said, sometimes you get what you pay for, and it's an important decision that people to make as far as electing which company you want to be insured with, because in a lot of ways you're trusting them to protect your most important assets.
Definitely. And you're talking about big money. Is something I point out to people is that their total insurance premiums, by all, if you add up all the different lines of coverage that you have, health, homeowners, auto, life, health insurance, that can exceed your total housing costs in a year.
Absolutely.
So why not know where it goes? And that's the other thing too, is, out here in California, houses are really expensive, so I mention to people, I go, if you expect an insurance company to pay you $1 million if your house burns down, you can't be surprised that your premium's over $1,000.
Right.
That's still a really good deal.
Right.
Explaining that leverage to people, that that the insurance companies have to pull that odds, and that goes towards the whole principle of insurance, is that it's all about pulling those odds, because as you say, there's going to be that disaster or that earthquake, and the insurance companies are going to be expected to pay claims.
Exactly.
So one of the things you mentioned that I think is oftentimes people don't think about is they do think of the insurance industry as being stale, but you've said that the insurance industry isn't stale. Why do you feel that the insurance industry isn't stale?
Yeah, I think as we've seen with technology and just the marketplace in general, things are moving faster and faster every year. And with new developments becomes new risks and exposures for people to manage. Earlier I was talking about examples with things like ride sharing with Uber and Lyft, or vacation rentals. So there's constantly new risks that are being introduced that customers are desiring coverage for, and that insurance companies are tasked with coming up with creative products that can kind of meet those needs. So I think there's kind of the what we insure, but then the other kind of element that's exciting within the industry is how we do it. So in the financial space, you've heard of the whole fintech movement, same thing in insurance, insurance tech. And there's so many different companies and vendors out there now that are trying to provide new data points or insights for insurance companies to be able to accurately rate policies and make that customer experience even more streamlined and smooth throughout the process. So a lot of, kind of going back to what we've talked about a lot, there's a lot of money in the insurance industry as far as premiums being paid, and that's attracting a lot of players into the space to come up with these creative solutions on how we can execute even better.
So, one of the, how we met was we share a common interest of both insurance and emergency management. How do you feel that emergency management fits in with insurance?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think there's kind of two sides to it. So as we talked about earlier, within insurance, there's everyday claims happening every day. People are getting into car accidents, homes are having leaks, but the big ones that make the news, the hurricanes and the wildfires and things like that, those are major emergencies that communities need to respond to. So I find it interesting to have insights into what does that whole process look like as far as the logistics and the response and the communications on the community side. And while the local agencies and communities are responding, at the same time, oftentimes insurance companies are responding as well to get a presence out there in the field to be close to their customers. Oftentimes if customers are having to evacuate, they really don't have anywhere else to go. So it's a strong practice for insurance companies to go out and be at the evacuation sites, to have a friendly face there that can be there to support the customers and get them the information and to take their claim and to build that relationship relationship and just offer them that support in the trying time. So it's kind of also tasked upon the insurance companies to figure out what the logistics and things, booking the hotels and getting the resources on site and coordinating everything, while obviously not getting in the way or disrupting what the local responders need to be doing as well to keep everybody safe.
Well, that's great. And that's something, that I've tried to, talk about is that, really when you're buying insurance is you are preparing for an emergency, whether that risk is your home burning down, an earthquake, getting into a car crash. It's always about an event that you can prepare for, and that insurance is just a form of emergency management. So, I love that you're going down that avenue as well. Do you think that that might help with consumers if they start thinking about insurance from that perspective, that it's part of their emergency toolkit?
Yeah, I think absolutely right. Like everybody learns the value of insurance when you have to have a claim, right? Something devastating happens. Nobody is eager to write that check each month, right, to pay for your car insurance or the life insurance. But man, in those events where something significant happens, you're going to be grateful that those dollars were spent. And there's, I think, as part of the emergency preparation process, it's so important that people know what they're buying. And within the industry, we often hear so many times people, throw out general terms like, I have full coverage, and, to an insurance person, that can mean so many different things because we offer so many different levels of different limits and things like that. And just the more educated consumers can be, I know you're big into financial literacy, and I think insurance is a big part of that, and knowing what your coverages are and how you can better kind of manage the risks of your household.
Definitely. Yeah. And one of the things that I learned in first aid is that you can have the most complex first aid kit, but if you don't understand how to use the tools in your first aid kit, they don't do you any good.
Exactly.
And that the best first aid kit is the one that you happen to have with you. So if you haven't stocked it, and like you said, is that gets into the coverages that people have is maybe they don't read their policy or they haven't done a review. I know that's some of the things that I've seen is that people don't take they get their insurance policy and they don't come back and look at it for a couple of years.
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of set it and forget it, and another practice that's really helpful for people, especially on the homeowner side, is to do a home inventory. You hear now about people taking pictures or taking a video across your house to kind of capture, what was the construction and the materials used within my home? What were the different pieces of personal property that we kept, so that in the event that you've got to evacuate in the middle of the night, that you've got some really strong documentation that's going to kind of help you support you throughout that claims process and just make it easier on you to go through that.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's valuable advice is that you have to do this stuff ahead of time. That's the whole word, prepare. So,
Exactly.
so if you can plan ahead. So, one of the other things is you're in a leadership position, and leadership is really important. And there's many different styles of leaders. What is your leadership philosophy?
Yeah, to me, I lead a really great team, and to me, it's really about caring for your people, caring about your customers, and caring about the work that you do. Everybody's kind of got that built-in kind of BS detector that you can tell when people are being authentic or not. And I think it's so critical that leaders remain invested and visible amongst their team. One of the quotes that I've really been leveraging a lot recently is your greatest ability is availability. We always talk about the greatest gift you can give people is your time. And I think that's no different for leaders. And that doesn't mean that you need to hover around your team and micromanage them, but people take great comfort in knowing that, man, if I really need something, I can reach out to my leader, and I know they're available, and I'm not going to be bothering them. And I think that's just such a great philosophy, is really focus on your availability, creating those connections with your team, and building those personal relationships to be able to support them and getting the work done.
Yeah, getting the work done. That's it. But I think what's even more critical is the communication component. as you mentioned, is great communication, I think, is a sign of a good leader. You can have the strong silent type, but you need some communication so that the people you're working with on your team know what to do and what to expect, and to be able to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that the pandemic has taught us over the last year, right? Communication has always been hard enough amongst the team, but you take everybody and go remote overnight, and it's you can't read that body language all the time. You're not passing people in the hallways at the office, and you really need to be proactive and over communicate, especially with the pace that business gets done these days, with the amount of change going on, that your people remained informed and engaged so that they can best perform and execute on the tasks.
Fantastic. So, as we're talking about that, what do you feel goes into being a good leader? What would you go, do you have anything to go beyond that?
Yeah, I think, if I'm judging a leader, I think there's kind of two components to it. It's, one, are you getting results? And then two, are your people engaged, and are you retaining your talent? It's easy to do them in, not easy, but it's easier to do them in isolation, right? Like, you can go out and grind your team and push everybody hard, and you can get the results for a time, but you're really going to lose them on that engagement piece, and people are going to start to unplug, or you're going to lose key team members. And then on the flip side of that, you can really drive the engagement piece. You can be everybody's buddy and have the fun environment and have everybody super excited to go to work. But at the same time, if you're not getting the results done, you're also not being successful as a leader. So to me, the leaders that really stand out or that are impressive are the ones that are able to do both of that, where it's, you can drive results, really execute on the strategy, but then at the same time have a team of people that are passionate about the work, engaged on what they're doing, and excited to come in each day.
That's great. Well, it sounds like it's really, being a good leader is about finding balance, and between those, being fun and being accessible, and but also holding your team accountable.
Absolutely.
So, so one of the things I know in emergency management that I spent a lot of time talking about was leadership. Have you found anything in emergency management training, leadership training, that you might apply to the financial services world?
To me, the thing that really stands out about emergency management, and it's one of the reasons why I started to study it, is that I was really passionate about leadership, and I asked myself, where does leadership need to show up the most, right? And it's most often when we're caught off guard and there's an emergency going on. But I think if you dive into emergency management, some of the common themes are around communication, preparation, organization. And I think the more structure and framework you can put in place to operate, whether it's in the course of responding to an emergency, or just how you manage your week or your day or your month, the more successful that you're going to be as a leader.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I think that's so important, is, that being a good leader is also being organized, having your own act together and your own day together. But as you point out, is also the communication is really key. One of the things that, I learned when I did my emergency management training, that a lot about it is that hierarchy, that you have things ready to go. So again, it's about being prepared. So when an emergency kicks in, everybody knows their role. There's not a discussion of like, okay, you're in charge. There's a whole incident command system. So when you're thinking about that, and for people putting together their insurances, not phrasing this question very well, but how can people put those organization principles into effect, when reviewing their insurance or thinking about their insurance policies, is, so they're prepared and organized?
Yeah, I think it goes to kind of their insurance preparation, or even their financial preparation. Just like with a business or anybody else, I think the first step is really understanding what are the risks that we're exposed to, right? So if I'm the only person maybe working in my household, disability insurance is probably going to be pretty important if we're all dependent on, my one income. If you look at your house, being your biggest asset, if obviously you're going to want to look to protect that and make sure that you have the proper coverages on that. We always talk about in the finance world having an emergency fund. You never know when the car's going to break or you have the unexpected job loss that you are anticipating those things. Everybody I know has either had a car breakdown or experienced a job loss. So while we call them an emergency, a lot of these things can be expected. We just don't know when they're going to surface. And the more we can think about them and plan appropriately on how we're going to respond to them when they come up, the better we're going to be able to sleep at night and the more prepared we're going to be in the event that those things do happen. And even if they don't, you're going to be even better for it.
Well, fantastic. And I'm glad you brought up that point is like, especially with disability insurance or other things, is that you have to plan for certain events. And that as part of emergency management is you have to pack the right tools for the different situations that you might face, because you don't know which kind of emergency you're going to be faced with. It'd be more convenient if you knew what kind of emergency, but that's not the nature of emergencies,
Yeah, you find out the hard way most of the time. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, so you have to go through the checklist, and that gets back to what you were saying earlier, is about being organized and thinking about the different types of events that might happen so that you can have a system in place for all those events, not just, if you only have auto insurance, well, great, you're prepared if you get in a car accident, but if your house burns down, you didn't prepare very well. So
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's like delineating that whole program to make sure you're protecting against all your risks. The question I always like ending up with is, what is your number one tip on being financially prepared?
Yeah, I think finance is an area that I've always been passionate about with personal finance, and in talking to people about it, I think one of the biggest opportunities people have is to think of your household like a business in some ways, right? And every single business runs off of some common financial statements. So I'd encourage people to build a balance sheet to kind of explore where they're at in their house. So many times I talk to people and they have no idea with where they're even starting from as far as what they have or who they owe, and just doing that accounting of what are your assets, what are your liabilities, so that where you're starting from. And then from there, I'd encourage people to take a look at doing some sort of income statement. What is the income that our household is bringing in each month? And then getting very diligent and disciplined about tracking your expenses. I don't think people have to do it forever, but I know there's been periods where I'll go in and we're meticulous about tracking every dollar. And it's amazing what you end up spending versus what you think you spend, right? Because we all know about the big structural costs. We all know about, the mortgage payment or the car payment or the cell phone bill. But it's very easy to forget about, I did spend $20 on Girl Scout cookies when I was walking out of the store, or, they were taking donations at work. So I contributed I put some money in the bucket, and you start adding up all those little incremental things that we kind of do on autopilot, and it can really tell a different story, and it can help people identify those opportunities they have within their budget to maybe increase their savings or be a little bit more disciplined on their spending habits.
Definitely. Well, those Girl Scouts, they know how to get you those delicious cookies.
Right? Tough to say no to a Girl Scout.
Exactly. Or Girl Scout cookies. I mean,
right?
That's a hard one. And this show is not brought to you by the Girl Scouts. But, all kidding aside, that raises a very good point. And I think this also gets back to the emergency management, is that it's the little things that start to add up, and it's the attention to details. And I think that gets back to what you were saying at the very beginning with understanding your insurance and understanding your financial services products. And that's another way that I think emergency management translates to the financial services world, is that emergency management dictates, a certain attention to detail. You
Right.
can't slip up. You have to have, like you said, you have to be organized. Do you find that as well, that they
Yeah,
translate in that way?
no, I think it is in the details, and I would encourage people, as you want to pursue being a little bit more educated on, what are my coverages? What does my policy cover? A lot of times people either have an insurance agent or obviously you're tied to an insurance company. Like they want to educate you. They can walk through the process with you and help you better understand what you are buying so that you can make the most use of your insurance dollars and apply them to the coverages that are going to provide the most security to your household. So don't feel like you need to go out and figure it out on your own. Have them earn those premiums and be there to consult with you and provide guidance and answer your questions so that you feel good about the policies that you're buying.
Well, that's great. And that's something I encourage people is to ask questions. Is, you're the customer. If you're purchasing a policy, you have the right to ask your insurance company and your insurance agent questions, and you have the right to have your questions answered in a way that makes sense to you. So that's great that you guys encourage people to ask questions, because I think that's really important is for consumers to ask questions, because you're not going to learn something if you don't ask about it.
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking to hear when people learn about it after the fact, right? Like the time to find out about your coverages is not after the claim has happened. So in the spirit of this whole conversation about being proactive, being prepared, these are things that you can be doing today so that hopefully you never encounter hopefully you never have to file a claim or go through one of these experiences. But look for those opportunities to be proactive and get ahead, to provide the best security to your family.
That's great. That's great advice. So Blair, where can people learn more about you or be in touch with you?
Yeah, probably the best place for people to find me is just on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people within the industry or across any industry. Always open up to building new relationships and helping other people. My name's pretty unique, so if they just search Blair Wachob, Wachob on LinkedIn, I'm pretty easy to find and would love to connect with anybody that's interested.
Fantastic. And I'll put a link to Blair's LinkedIn profile in the show notes. So anybody who's listening or watching the podcast can just go to the show notes and go on over to LinkedIn and connect with Blair. Blair, thank you for joining me today. It's been great.
Tony, I appreciate the time and the conversation we had. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much. And to everybody, thank you for watching or listening to the Tony Steuer podcast. Until next time.